you scoop your cat up. Wrap your arms around them. Pull them in close, the way you'd hug a friend, a partner, a child. And your cat just sits there. Maybe purrs. Maybe stares off at nothing in particular. Maybe tolerates it for exactly 11 seconds before wriggling free and hopping down like nothing happened. You've probably told yourself that's just your cat being a cat. A little standoffish. A little too independent for cuddles. But here's what's actually happening. Your cat has no concept of a hug. Not the way you mean it anyway. What you're doing to them, from their perspective, isn't an embrace at all. It's something much closer to a trap. And the fact that they let you do it anyway, most of the time without a fight, says a lot more about your relationship than any hug ever could. 1. Hugging isn't a cat behavior. Let's start with the basics. Hugging is a primate thing. Humans do it, apes do it, and we're wired from birth to read a tight embrace as comfort, safety, connection. Cats never developed that instinct because cats never needed it. In the wild, a cat wrapped tightly by another animal isn't being comforted. It's being restrained.
Pinned.
Held in place against its will. That's not a friendly interaction between cats. That's what happens right before a fight, or right before something becomes prey. So when you wrap your arms around your cat, their brain doesn't have a folder labeled hug to file that experience under. It has a folder labeled restraint. And restraint, to a cat, is never neutral. It always triggers some version of an alert, even if it's a mild one. 2. What a hug actually feels like to them. Picture it from the cat's side for a second. Their paws lose contact with a solid surface or get pinned against their own body. Their legs, the exact tool they'd use to run or defend themselves, are suddenly useless. Their head gets trapped against your chest, cutting off a chunk of their view of the room around them. For an animal whose entire survival strategy is built around escape routes and constant awareness of its surroundings, that's a lot to process in one moment. It's not painful. It's not even necessarily unpleasant to them. But it is, on a biological level, a small alarm bell going off. Their body is built to ask one question the second their movement gets restricted: can I get away if I need to? That's why you'll sometimes see a cat go stiff the moment you hug them, even if they're not actively struggling. That stiffness isn't defiance, and it isn't rudeness. It's their nervous system running a quick, automatic check before deciding whether it's safe to relax. 3. So why do they let you do it anyway? This is the part that actually matters, because here's where it flips from cats hate hugs into something far more interesting. A cat that trusts you learns to override that alarm. Not because the hug itself starts feeling good the way it does for us, but because repetition has taught them this particular kind of restraint always ends the same way. Nothing bad happens. You let go. Life goes back to normal. That's not affection in the human sense. That's a cat doing something arguably braver than affection. They're choosing to suppress a survival instinct because they've decided, based on evidence, that you specifically are not a threat. Every single time your cat lets you hold them without a fight, they're making a calculated decision to let their guard down completely, in a position where they'd have zero ability to defend themselves if something went wrong. For a species built almost entirely around self-reliance, that's about as close to real trust as it gets. 4. The cats who never fully get there. Not every cat reaches that point, and that's worth understanding, especially if your cat squirms every single time you try. Cats that had a rough start, ones that came from unpredictable environments, or cats that are simply wired to be more high-strung, sometimes never fully override that restraint alarm. It's not personal, and it doesn't mean they love you any less than a cat who melts into a hug. The cost-benefit calculation their brain runs just never quite tips far enough in favor of this is worth it. Some cats are also naturally more independent from birth, the same way some people genuinely dislike being hugged too tightly, no matter who's doing it. That's not a bond problem. That's simply temperament, and it's worth respecting rather than fighting. The mistake a lot of owners make is holding on longer when a cat starts to squirm, because letting go feels like admitting rejection. In reality, that works against you. A forced hug that ends in struggle just reinforces the alarm instead of quieting it for next time. 5. What they're actually asking for instead. If your cat isn't a hugger, that doesn't mean they don't want closeness with you. It just means they want it delivered on completely different terms. Watch what a cat actually chooses to do on their own when nobody's making them. Pressing their side firmly against your leg while you cook. Draping themselves across your lap the second you sit down. Sleeping with just a paw or their tail touching your foot instead of being curled up inside your arms. These are all forms of physical contact your cat selected entirely on their own terms, with a clear exit always available if they change their mind. That's the real cat version of a hug. Not restraint, but proximity by choice. And honestly, that might be the more meaningful version of the two, because nothing about it required your cat to override a deep survival instinct just to be near you. It was simply them deciding unprompted that they wanted to be close. The reveal. So no, your cat doesn't think you're hugging them. There's no warm, fuzzy translation happening somewhere in their head that matches what's happening in yours. But every single time they let you do it anyway, without a fight, without bolting the second you loosen your grip, that's them making a choice most animals in the wild never get the luxury of making. To let their guard all the way down around something far bigger than them, holding them completely still. That's not a cat simply tolerating your affection. That's a cat actively handing you their trust, one slightly awkward, slightly stiff hug at a time. So next time your cat goes stiff in your arms for a few seconds before finally melting into you, remember that melt is the whole story. Is your cat a hugger or a squirmer? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear how your cat handles it. If you made it this far, you clearly understand that cats are more than just pets, they're mysteries wrapped in fur. Want more stories like this? Tap the video on your screen to keep exploring the secret world of cats. And don't forget to subscribe, because in every cat, there's a story waiting to be told.